All right, we're live. Welcome, everybody.
Hey!
Hey,
Hey-o.
gonna try some new camera angles this time.
New camera angles?
New ones. That's right.
Cool.
See that? No one can see what I'm working on. Gonna make sure
This your
the glare just hides everything perfectly.
this your short story that you're working on?
Yeah, it's
Nice.
getting real close. I'm basically just coloring pages now. Not
Very
coloring,
cool.
but just doing grayscale.
Hmm. Oh, you're gonna do the whole story in grayscale?
Yeah, it's real loose grayscale. I mean, here you can kind of see. Oh, you can't see.
Oh, a little bit.
Yes, I see the blur of
Here,
your
let
screen. It's good.
me change my screen share.
Man, Michael, your fan on the
Is
ceiling
it whipping?
is really a special effect.
Yeah, sorry. I
Great.
wish I could get the iPad to angle better, but it's just the way the stand sets it up. So I'll
Are
angle
you
it more
doing
the
that on
same.
the iPad? I see. I
Yeah.
see.
The
Yeah, and
because of where
just continuing the topic
yeah.
or pre-show topic, mobile working. Actually, I've tried a bunch of setups, and hey, dog.
How did
Welcome,
how's it
Doug.
going?
and um and I even last year I even was on tour for Microsoft, working on their Surface Pro and Surface tablet things,
Mm-hmm.
just doodling all day and answering questions. um and the thing is, with any mobile setup that I tried so far,
What
is
up?
I always miss the freedom of having a lot of keys around me,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
having a lot of screen estate. This is something that even after hours of working, in this with this Microsoft gig, I worked like 1 week, 8 hours a day on such a setup. And even after that time, I couldn't get used to the small screen, the lack of decent keyboard input, and especially second screen for palettes and stuff like that. It's just not working for me. I need the big playground to really feel creative.
Yeah.
But I definitely can see people that, I don't know, take their iPad Pro to a cafe and work there, or out in the park.
That's actually what Josh and I do. Like every Tuesday night, we go to a local
Yeah.
Whataburger that's open 24 hours, and we just draw for like 3.5 hours with our iPads until it just gets late. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely not what I would prefer, period. But they've got it to a place for me where I'm like, okay, I can be productive on this
Yeah.
in the actual programs I work on. Whereas before, you were working in an app that was a dumbed down version of the same thing I would use on my PC, or my desktop. But now that they've pretty much made it a one-to-one comparison,
Mm.
I'm not losing anything. It may not be as convenient or as preferential, but it still gets the same job done. Um, so I don't know. I like it, but it's certainly at a point where I'm like, okay, I now need to go sit at my desk and work on it. But where it is nice is like sitting down watching TV with my wife. I can sit and ink a page or sketch some stuff out and like do some pre-work before I'm going to go sit down at the computer for a few hours and do the finished stuff.
Yeah.
I've not done many finished pieces of art on my iPad Pro. I will concede that at this point, but I know people who do, and they do a really great job with it. I just not
Well,
on
the
their
thing
level yet.
that I could really imagine would be doing thumbnails and sketches on a mobile device,
Mm-hmm.
and doing that in bulk. The thing is that my current workflow is always doing one sketch, then working on it and finishing it. So that's not a workflow that would work for me right at the moment. But I could imagine that if sketching and thumbnailing is a big task, that could actually be done pretty nicely anywhere on a mobile device, because there you don't even need so much fiddling around with layers and stuff, and you don't need so much fine control over selections or whatever. You can just doodle and sketch, and that's that of course then is very possible on an iPad, for example.
That's the only thing I've ever done with the iPad Pro so far is actually thumbnails, and it worked really well for it. But when I tried to take those thumbnails in and clean it up, it just, I don't know, I just couldn't like feel comfortable in it. And I could do things on the like what's the program I have? Procreate. I can do some neat things on that, you know, that I can't easily do on Photoshop. But even with that, it's you know, I only got something out of it when it was doing thumbnails, and it was really nice for that. It was really nice for that.
So I've basically found that I can do line work again because Clip Studio has been brought over. I can do my inking, I can do my pencil, I can do everything except for coloring. Coloring was where I feel like I'm just not as comfortable in there. I need my presets and the way I have everything set up in Photoshop to actually move quickly. But the inking process and all is like this. It's the same. Like, I don't know if you, not that it's going to be like a wow factor or anything, but Jason, I think I sent all of you guys and Doug the Star Wars homage Adamsville poster I did for the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I did most of that in the iPad Pro. So it's, you know, I don't feel like I lose anything, but I'm definitely not as comfortable there. But I took a recent business trip, and that's what I took along with me. And I got a lot done. I did some inking on pages. I did some writing, played some video games, watched movies. It's a nice device, and it's more affordable than something like a Cintiq Companion is, which is still like $1,600.
Yeah.
Do you think, but are the tools sophisticated enough to actually ink a page? Like, would you go, oh, I'll do a final ink? Because I ink pages in public places all the time. I can go to a bar, bring my brush. I can, you know, I can ink on my Cintiq, not anywhere, but I'm always trying to get out of my studio. But if I was, I'd use traditional. And to me, the first step in what those Surface Pros and what all those things need to offer is like, okay, it's a little rougher on the sketching, but you can take it anywhere. But you could technically do final work. Could you, with that stylus, get Manga Studio to work?
Yeah, I mean they ported Clip Studio to the iPad Pro, so it's on there. I think we talked a little bit about it once. Like Josh actually uses it a lot to do final inks on. Since I'm not in production on a comic, I can't tell you exactly if I would love it for that or not. What I can say is when I've messed with it, I felt like the pressure sensitivity isn't as good. But when I use the pencil tool to ink, which is kind of what I've been doing more similar to like the way Kazu inks pages.
Yeah.
I've been using the pencil tool in Clip Studio Paint to ink and give it a pencil look for the final inks, and that looks great. Like it looks traditional. It looks awesome. But the inking tool, I feel like you get way better pressure sensitivity on the actual Cintiq than on the iPad Pro. So, but you know, that might just be something I'm not tweaking or messing around enough.
Yeah, and if you found the pencils fine and the inking wasn't quite right, then it would, you know, having a useful portable pencil device would be very useful. Just in and of its digital pencil.
It's definitely that.
Cool.
Did you say you have one? Didn't you say you bought one, Doug?
I got an iPad, iPad Pro.
You have the Pro? Okay.
And so what program do I use on it? What one should I use?
It's Manga Studio. It's called Clip Studio Paint now.
Okay, yeah.
So it's on the iPad. Just download Clip Studio Paint. They have if you'll get a free base version of the software for free always. But it's pretty stripped bare, and if you have specific brushes that you like I use some of those brushes that guy Friendon created on Twitter. You have to actually pay for it. It's a subscription service, like everything's going. But you do sign up and you get a 6-month free trial. So if at the end of the 6 months you're like, it's not worth paying the money for it, I'm not using it, you could just drop the subscription end of it. But I found it to be, it's worth the money for me to be able to leave and go work and be more productive outside of the house.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, give it a shot. I think I don't know that it's 100% there, but it's getting there. I think it's getting there. My daughter actually asked for this year. She likes drawing and writing, and she was like, "Daddy, I don't want anything else for my birthday." I don't think she wants a party. She's like, "I just want an iPad and a pencil so I can do digital art." And I'm like, maybe let's talk about it.
If she's serious to do that, that'd be worth it. I can't get my kids to seriously commit.
Yeah, no, she's really into art, and she's I'm actually, so I was telling Jason about this last week, and Steven some. I've been really struggling with having finished this last book and just sort of feeling like I need some time to regroup because I just need a little bit of time to kind of reset. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to do some smaller projects like Jason's doing. And my daughter wrote this book that I think is a pretty solid children's book. It needs to be touched up and worked on. But I think I'm going to do that next. I'm going to spend a couple months and finish that book.
That'd be so cool.
But
I remember Mike Mignola wrote a book with his daughter, and she won an Eisner. And then Ethan Nicole's little brother, I'm going like,
these kids
kind of suck, and some kids' stories may kind of suck, but the opportunity of getting to work on a story with my kid would just be so great. Lot.
She and I did a book together a few years ago when she was like 4. Like she would just tell me goofy stuff. I actually did an Axe Cop guest strip which she wrote. It's on Ethan's website. And but she kind of took that experience and has just run with it. I mean, we have boxes and boxes of books she's written. And I was showing it to Josh last night, and I was like, hey, read this. Give me your impressions. I think there's some opportunities that we might need to do some rewriting on it. Just let me know what you think. And he read it, and he's just looking at me. He's like, this is kind of freaking me out how good she's at it. She's good at how good she is at this at 9 years old. I think she's going to be really, really good if she sticks with it. It's kind of scary.
I collected some of her drawings that she gave me when she was like 4 or 5. I think I still got them somewhere.
And her name is Story, so it's just apt. She's
wow, that's a
right
cool
built in there. Yeah. So she actually, I went to her today during lunch, and I said, hey, I've been thinking of adding some stuff to your book. Do you care if I do some rewriting on it to sort of sort some things out? Here's what I'm thinking. And she's been coming to me going, yeah, what if this is how this works and how that works? So she's kind of been popping in and out all day going, Daddy, I think I have an idea. What if we had this? And it's fun. I didn't get to do this for a long time because we were so deep in Adamsville that I couldn't do it. But I'm like, let's take some time and enjoy this for a while. This is nice. You should do it, Doug. Get your kids to make a book with you.
I try. They're like, I don't want to write a story. I'm like, I want to read this book. I want to read Harry Potter. I'm like, you're a consumer. You're just another consumer, man.
Hey, we need those too, right?
I used to tell you talk about telling stories. I used to tell my kids the story of the big mouth frog. Remember the one who's like, hey, what you guys doing? and then a wolf comes up and goes, what's your name? And he goes like, he makes a real tiny mouth. He goes like, Greg, like real tiny. And my kids would laugh and laugh at that big mouth frog. And I started extending it into this giant epic that they would have me tell over and over every night. And it would change a little bit each night. And it ended up being like, I made this giant tearjerker epic out of it.
Oh my gosh.
It took like 30 minutes to tell. And they knew every turn of it as it grew, and how he became like this hero because of his big mouth. And of course, I forgot every one of those stories, but I always recorded them because they were good. Some of the best.
You totally should have done it.
Some of the best stuff I ever made. Gone.
Oh man, you should have totally jotted that down. The have you guys seen Lady in the Water?
No.
The movie.
No.
So the only, I mean, there's lots of commentary that can be made on whether the movie's good or not. But one of the things that is interesting about it was based off of a bedtime story he used to tell his kids that he sort of expanded and turned into this giant thing. I like the movie
good.
quite a bit, but
that always looked good to me. I always wanted to see it. Looked good.
It's one of his weirder movies. It was when he kind of started going off into that area where he was making not great films for a little while. I think M. Night's made some good ones the last couple movies, but there was a stretch there where it was pretty rough. But it's a pretty good movie. It's one that's grown on me a lot. Worth checking out if you're ever looking for something different. It's like I said, it's different. I wouldn't say it's amazing, but it's interesting.
Yeah, now that I know what you're talking about, I thought you were. I didn't know. I didn't remember what it was called, but yeah, I've seen that one and I really liked it. Back when I saw it.
I mean, there's a really interesting book written.
Right, Paul Giamatti,
I
think.
Yep, and Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah.
There's an interesting book that was written by when he was writing the script called "The Man Who Heard Voices," and this journalist just followed him during the whole making of the movie. It's a really fascinating kind of behind the doors look at like what was going on in Hollywood and how Disney sort of like the script and how he's just like stuff, whether it's good or not. Is and I'll always give M. Night credit for one thing, regardless of your feelings on him as a filmmaker, he usually makes something original, and that's so uncommon.
Yeah, I think he's fun as a storyteller. I'd welcome him over. I mean, we complain about him for being mediocre or whatever, but I'd prefer any of his over most of what's made.
I agree.
He writes and directs, creates good stuff.
I like this. Have you seen the new one, Split and Visit, yet?
I saw Split. I did not see the other one, and I never saw the Sigourney Weaver one either. The Village.
The Visit or the Village, yeah. You'd probably like The Village, actually. If you dig for the moral center of what's going on, I think you'd like it a lot.
Okay, I liked Unbreakable a lot. That's one of my favorite all time.
Unbreakable's great. It's one that I remember seeing in the theater and hating, and grew on me so much. The more like I realized what it was, I was like, "Oh, it's a superhero's origin story." Like,
it's a perfect one too. It's just a perfect movie.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that it was a little gory when it goes into the woman dead and that weird guy. That always bugged me. Too disturbing. There you go.
Oh, did y'all hear my son yelling? He's mad about something.
Yeah.
He's been playing.
Right when Doug says gory, we hear a scream.
He's been playing Shadow of Colossus, and it's been frustrating him to no end. But it's like the greatest thing to ever watch because it drives him insane. But when he gets it and he kills one of the monsters, it's like the most elated thing you've ever seen in your life. He's just rejoicing from the depths of his core. But he will stand there and sob because like he'll climb up to the top of it and it'll shake him off and he will just lose it. And we have to tell him, like, you need to take a break, put the game down and go do something else for a little while. Like, this is getting you too emotionally worked up, son. But I recorded him killing one of the monsters, and it was just such a great moment just watching it come over him.
Hey, Doug, what are you drawing?
I'm doing a piece to a game idea, like a board game. I've been working on for a while, just screwing around with some ideas. And I'm talking to another game designer who has a lot of successful games on Kickstarter about a partnership we were just talking about today, going in on a game.
Oh, cool.
Is this Quest?
Yes. It's what Quest is going to become. How's that?
Cool.
So
what's that?
It's probably not a go, but this is based on the Quest game. What's
Quest?
That Quest, it's based on, it's my version of chess.
Oh, okay.
I'll show you some of the. Here's some of the Quest piece. I play chess with the kids. I'm not serious or anything, like anyone who's decent could kick my butt. But my kids were studying chess in school, and so like this is an infinity piece. You can move it in any direction to the end of the board. So this would replace a rook. And then this is a brick wall. So you can put this in front of a piece, and it will deflect, so it keeps a piece from attacking from one side if you need protection for your king.
Mm-hmm.
This is hard to see because it's dark, but it's a man holding up a platform, right? See him holding it up?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little man holding up a platform. And so if you needed to protect a piece, you could put a piece on that, and they have to kill this piece. And so it turns any piece into a 2-shot hit for chess.
Mm.
And then this is a teleport seat, a throne that the little king sits on. You sit the king on here. Oh, dang it. He's not compliant. Okay, anyways, you get the idea, right? There's the king. So he's a 2-shot king also. You have to hit him once and knock him off the throne. And then you can hit the king and kill him. But the throne is a teleport that when you can take the king off it, then he's a one-hit king. So you weaken him. But you can use the teleport, and if you put a piece on it like this, it goes over to a second chessboard that has 6x6 panels on it, and you can hide a piece over there on this 6x6.
An alternate dimension.
Yeah, an alternate dimension chessboard. And then, but if you kill the seat when something's hidden over there, it removes the bridge to get to it, so that piece also gets destroyed.
I'm distracted, Doug, because it says toilet fling on your.
Yeah, no, I'm like the toilet fling is where.
Yeah, that's another piece. That's another piece is going to be. This is called the. This is the gas station toilet fling. So it's a little gas station down here. See the pump, and it's got a toilet on top that a man sits on, and you pull it back and you fling it, and the little man, if he hits another piece, then you can move that piece 2 spaces. So there's a lot of, they're more interactive pieces is what I'm working on. And of course, good thing this won't be broadcast anywhere, so no one can take my ideas, but good thing no one's going to see this or anything. But this is the new queen. The queen is a giant chicken. She has a little crown. See her crown on her head? And what you do is she comes with an egg. So this is the egg piece here. And there's a hole in her back that you can see through it. It goes through her back, and then it goes out. There's a hole between her legs where the egg comes out from between her legs. So you load the egg in and you roll it. This is the queen, and any piece that egg hits is out. So it's got kind of an interactive element to the queen. This is a switch, the switcheroo. This piece you switch any 2 pieces on the board. And then instead of a pawn, this is a prawn. And there's like where it can go straight, straight ahead all the way across the board, but it's only with 1 piece. We have a whole bunch of prawns instead of pawns. And this is a 2-headed snake. This takes the place of the knight. And you can go up 2 and strike 2 at 2 angles. So I'm working on I come up with probably about 100 different pieces, and then decide which ones are best. So I got to come up with a whole bunch of little alternate.
That's pretty cool.
Chess ideas, and then I'm going to try and make little plastic figures and maybe Kickstarter with this game company.
Cool.
As someone who plays chess avidly, I find it really amusing. But I also recall, I think I actually I tried to make my own chess variant when I was in middle school or something, but it wasn't nearly as exciting.
Well, this is exciting, but it plays terrible, and that's kind of a problem.
It's hard to improve the perfect game.
Yeah, it is, and that's my thing. Is I go my kids had to study all of the provenance of chess. When they were in school, they learned all about the game and how old it is and all the moves. And I just go, man, there's got to be a way to improve on this thing. It's been around forever, and it's just it's like the perfect minimalist strategy game. And the thing that I really wished the most about it was I wish there was more character in it. I wanted to make all the, a little more humor, a little less sterile. and that's where this whole idea came from. So I'm working on it. I don't know if anything's going to come of it, but I got to come up with my 100 pieces. Keep on going. This is going to be a piece that when he touches, if he's touching another piece, he can take on its powers. So it's like a powers sap, you know.
I'm intrigued by it, not because I'm a huge chess player, although I do like the game, but I do play a lot of customizable card games like Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've always liked about them is that it's a simple card game, but the ongoing additions and subtractions and things that get added to the game to continuously make it more complex and, you know, more varied.
Yeah.
So certainly interesting to see what you do with it.
Yeah, we came up with some good. We did some brainstorming today on the game. And this guy, he's from Berlin, and it was a really good brainstorm session. He gave me some great ideas. He's an expert in design. Incredible.
I had a friend recently contact me asking if I could help do some art for a game that he's developing, and I, after meeting with him, it just seems he's got a long ways to go before he needs to worry about what the artwork looks like.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
We need to get the game figured out, you know.
Yeah, the artwork and all this creative stuff is easy. Making the game, I think that's like impossible, man.
Mm-hmm.
You make that, it doesn't matter if the pieces are ugly, which is true of all games, really.
Right. I saw your tweet or your thing earlier, Doug, about Aslan, which was interesting because I just finished reading Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to my kids last night. You were talking about the voice of Aslan with Liam Neeson.
Yes, terrible.
And I like Liam Neeson.
I like Liam Neeson too, but I'm just saying he was a terrible Aslan. He's such a bland choice, you know, like this milk toast. His Aslan's milk toast, right? You know, I want the Taken. I want the Taken Liam Neeson.
Yes, Taken's so good. At the end of that movie, I'm just like, that whole movie, I'm like, you better find every one of them, murder those people kidnapping his daughter in the sex trade. Like, it gets me, as a father especially, I get so worked up watching them. I'm like, kill them all! You monsters!
Hey guys, I'm gonna jump off real quick.
All right. We picked up a box set of the Chronicles of Narnia, and I've been reading each volume to the kids at night, the older kids. I've never read them before, so it's kind of nice for both of us.
Oh, they're great.
I take that back. I've read The Magician's Nephew, and I've read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But that's to the extent, so I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of them or reading the rest.
Yeah, I read them all, and man, The Horse and His Boy is so weird, and Lewis wrote that thing in 2 weeks.
Oh,
The
really?
Horse and His Boy. Yeah. If you want to get your mind blown, read Dr. Michael Ward's book, Planet Narnia.
Mm-hmm.
It's his. I think it's the literary breakthrough of the last century. He puts together this theory that C.S. Lewis was not doing a strict allegory, but was paying tribute to the medieval idea of 7 planets. And he makes a compelling case, and I'm convinced. So I taught with him at Houston Baptist. He teaches at Houston Baptist, but he's like a Lewis scholar. But when you read this book, Michael, and you'll like this particularly, because that book talks about what Lewis thought of storytelling, atmosphere, and fairy tale. And it will change your mind on how you write. Planet Narnia. And so after that book, I finished reading that book, and I sat down and I wrote Ghostopolis in 2010. Like, it just changed the way I viewed story, and kind of that was the result.
I'll check it out right now.
Planet Narnia. I'll have to look it up too.
Yeah, it is an absolutely amazing read, and it's so chock full of Lewis and Tolkien and Chesterton that it's an education in and of itself too. So it ends up being a total overview of C.S. Lewis's work, because he's making his case by referencing, Till We Have Faces and Mere Christianity and Screw Tape Letters and all these things about secrecy and deception and playing the long game and all that. It ends up being a great overview of Lewis's work.
I need to read more of him in general. I remember reading Screw Tape Letters when I was in college and being pretty blown away by it.
Yeah, that's a great work. That's a great work. I really like. There's a book of short essays that came out after his death called God in the Dock. That's really good. I got the audio book of that. Fantastic.
I'd like to read some of his other stuff in general, like Surprised by Joy. And
yeah, and I never read that one. I've heard great things about that too. That's probably next on my list. And that
I've seen them.
Till We Have Faces was C.S. Lewis's favorite. But I read it, man, the first time, and I got halfway through it, and I put it down going, this is terrible. And then my friend Mike Nelson, the Riff Tracks guy, that's my favorite all-time book. And I read it again, and I had him provide commentary to me while I read it. And I go, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Well, I got commentary by Mike Nelson.
Have any of y'all read his other one, Out of the Silent Planet?
Yes, I love the
sci-fi series.
Yeah. That Hideous Strength, the last book, was another big influence on me.
I need to read more Lewis, man.
Yeah, man. He's kind of good.
He's done some things that have mattered. Checking out the Planet Narnia here. But it's been nice to finally read him, because I know he's one of those ones that that Narnia in particular is one of those ones I'm like, how have I made it this long and not read these? In general, I actually used to work at a Christian bookstore, and it was funny when Harry Potter came out. All the sort of hatred it got from the community as being all this witchcraft and giving this to our children. And then, kind of as a response, the Christian bookstore started carrying Narnia and Lord of the Rings, and I'd get people coming in all mad at us for carrying that, and I'm like, you guys don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no doubt. And I got that on VeggieTales. I tried putting magic in VeggieTales. Or, oh no, we don't do magic. Lewis does magic.
What? Yeah. It's literally vegetables running around talking.
Yeah, they are magic, and they just wouldn't have any of it. It was one of the. I'm not really contractually allowed to talk about it, but.
All right. Let's not get you in trouble.
It was as bad as you can imagine.
Mm.
Very frustrating.
Yeah, I was really excited that you were added in as the runner on that show.
Oh yeah, I fixed VeggieTales, man. People say I broke it. Oh man, I fixed it. That thing was awful. Ethan killed it. It was amazing.
Have you what do you this might be a weird question to ask, and we don't have to go down this territory, but especially since I assume you know him somewhat personally. But I really enjoyed Phil Vischer's book, Me, Myself, and Bob.
Yeah.
Like, I read that on a vacation, and it absolutely decimated me. Yeah. Because it was such a great portrait of how we build up these ideas of what our life should be and what matters, and how things outside of your control can take that away. And then, like, what are you left with? And I don't know. It was a really good book. I don't know if you've read it, but I listened to Phil Vischer's podcast.
I've worked a lot with Phil.
Mm-hmm.
And I see him as someone who's tortured by his past, and that's one reason why I won't be tortured over Earthworm Jim. Losing Earthworm Jim is I don't want to be bitter, and I don't want to, no regrets.
Yeah,
it's kind of key. And
I like his podcast a good bit.
Yeah, I've been on his podcast. I just think it's hard because you make something and it's yours, right? And then you lose it. And it's like, this is mine.
Mm.
But you don't legally own it or control it anymore. And I think that's something that's very hard on all artists, and it was really hard on Phil too. I just see him as I think it bent him.
Based on the way the book sort of lays out that experience, it absolutely did.
Yeah, and it's long term, because every time you hear how great VeggieTales is, and you hear you created it, and right down to even doing the voice. I mean, Bob's voice, that's Phil.
Mm-hmm. It's got to be weird to get called in to do that.
Yeah, it is weird. It is really. I watched it, from afar, kind of, and I have nothing but sympathy for the guy. I feel bad for him.
Mm.
But he's the one that chose to leverage the company to get a bank loan, and that's how they took the character from him. So it's kind of like no one twisted my arm to sign my character over to keep my job. I could have kept the character, and probably nothing would have happened with him. He wouldn't have been made into a game. And There you go. Everybody happy now. It's kind of like in the end, I think as creators, we're more in service to our audience and to the public than we are to our own IP ownership, even, in my view.
I think I wouldn't have a hard time with seeing like a book I've made turned into a movie if they changed it somewhat substantially, because I feel like the book always exists.
Yeah.
For my vision, but I would, if they just completely took, and started like making new books based on, like, I imagine this, like, I get like why George Lucas felt sort of the way he felt with the new Disney movies, going like, like, this is, I don't even have my hands on this, and this doesn't feel right at all.
Yeah.
The kind of the comments he was making shortly after, because I imagine it was a weird experience, but he also had to know it was coming. Like,
when I saw Force Awakens, I go, oh, thank goodness they took it away from him. Someone's finally doing something good. Then I saw Last Jedi. I'm like, oh man, poor Lucas. They should have gone back to him.
Wow.
And he'd have made a Phantom Menace. Oh.
But see, I like The Last Jedi, so I saw your stuff about it, but I didn't engage you on the Facebook regarding it. But I saw your comments.
Boo.
I get why people don't like it, but I enjoy it quite a bit. I do, but at the end of the day, I feel like with The Last Jedi being what it is, I'm so glad JJ's the one who's going to finish it.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he's the perfect one to finish it now. Like, if it would have, I don't think Ryan was the right choice for the final one. I thought when they announced him as the middle one, I was like, I think that's the right choice for the middle movie in the series. But JJ, I think, will just know how to bring it home in a way that'll be entertaining.
But Ryan screwed him over. It's like, look at what he set him up now to do. Like, JJ launches this thing, he's creating this cool Snoke, and then Ryan just takes it away. And he's creating these cool things. And Ryan kind of set him up like he's got a lot of work to do on this third movie to wrap it up. I mean, I don't know if he will wrap it up. He'll probably just go, we're going to make 7 of these instead, which I assume is going to happen anyways.
I think the only rebuttal I have when I hear that argument is, like, I know Ryan did what he did, but he's not like in a vacuum. These were all decisions that Kathleen Kennedy and Pablo Hidalgo and the Story Trust over at Lucasfilm were approving. And so they could have easily said, like, that wasn't our plan, we're not doing it, You
don't think that's marketing? That's just them. They're not allowed to diss their own movie. I mean,
they could have just said no, couldn't? I mean, like, if he writes what he writes about Rey's parents, and they're like, no, The Force Awakens, this is what our intents were, and we're not going to change that. Like, Ryan would have just had to go write something different. And so,
I guess I thought it was a bad move. I mean, not with Rey's parents, because they've already said that they could just say, oh,
spoiler alert for those who don't know.
Yeah, they can just say, oh, he misremembered. It's like Ben Kenobi saying Darth Vader killed your father. You can just go, in one way they were hapless drifters, but they were, it was Ben Kenobi's cousin. They were hapless drifters that are Ben Kenobi's cousin. They can do anything with that, but.
That would be.
I don't think JJ is going to continue the Ryan trajectory.
And see, like, the Snoke thing didn't bother me only because I was like, well, when but like if we throw the prequels out, because I want to, but
yeah,
if we throw them out and we think about Return of the Jedi, and I'm like, what do you know about the Emperor by the end of that? Nothing. You don't know where he came from. You don't know how he rose to power. You don't know what makes him important. He really was a gateway to make Vader and Luke come together. And I saw Snoke as being essentially the same thing. So for Rey and Kylo. So it was like, it didn't bother me. Like, I get why people were like, why aren't we getting these answers? But I feel like I actually was thinking about, I'm going to detour a little bit, but I think it has a lot more to do with like the expectations we come into these stories with. Like, for instance, I won't spoil it because I'm assuming most of you haven't seen A Quiet Place, but A Quiet Place is this movie that I really like, but most people seem to come out of it with all these questions like, what about this? And how does that? That doesn't make any sense. And it's like we're now conditioned to watch these movies with the sense of like of a mystery box that they need to unfold all the mysteries for us. And I was like, I don't care if I don't know who Snoke is. He's not the point. Like, I care about Kylo, and that moment with Kylo and Snoke is amazing. Like,
but Snoke could have been Vader or Emperor. I think the Emperor has more presence. Even in Empire, it's very weird because at the end of Force Awakens, I wasn't in love with Snoke, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of Phantom Menace, I wasn't in love with Darth Maul. I was like, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
So they're loading up this bad guy, and part of the Star Wars, the love of Star Wars, is that you just love the bad guys. I mean, the bad guys are awesome,
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't get that with Snoke. I want my bad guys to be awesome. Vader at the end of Rogue One had more presence, and he only shows up for 5 seconds. And Snoke, before we know who he is, they cut him down. I just go, I want more. More. Not satisfied. He was much more like Darth Maul than Vader.
I'm not disagreeing there. I just wonder how much of it was something we built up as being important rather than the movies building up as being important. Like a similar thing with like Captain Phasma, and they're like, "Oh, she doesn't have anything." I'm like, "Have you not remember Boba Fett?"
Too. Captain Phasma. That's the
like,
same
what about
thing.
Boba Fett?
I feel the same way. Boba Fett, yeah. But
I mean, he gets nothing.
True. It's true. It's true.
But so I guess it
Boba
just
Fett
doesn't
look cool.
Yeah, I just sort of feel like I'm like, I sort of like, to me it's just normal Star Wars. Like, they're just all stuff, find some of it interesting and some of it not. And I just mainly care about my main characters. And I'm like, I really like Kylo. I really like Rey. I like what they're doing there. And I was musing on this where, I think the sort of the message people take from The Last Jedi is that the movie's about, kill your past, or, let the past die, kill it if you have to. And I was thinking about how, like, that's really Kylo's perspective on the theme. That's not the theme of the movie. Yeah. And really, it's Luke has a similar thought on it, but really where he ends up at the end of the movie is, no, we don't kill the past. We don't move on.
That's true.
It's really about preserving legend and preserving, things that are important. And but I feel like that sort of that line in the trailer has been run off with, where people are like, they're just interested in killing everything. I'm like, it's the exact opposite by the end of the movie. It's called a story arc. That's the way these things work. But
my beef is that I don't want, I wanted, and you saw this in my post, is when I go to Star Wars, it is all nostalgia. I can't help but have it not be nostalgia.
Oh, it's for sure there, yeah.
And we don't want our nostalgia jacked with. I want the Luke coming out of a trash compactor going, oh yeah, Yahoo! At the end of Jedi, hugging Han after he solemnly kills his dad. Not this grouchy, throw the lightsaber, drink the milk,
Yeah.
It just felt like it was too big of a jump, and that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for Luke. By the way, same thing with Leia. I mean, she looked like she had a stroke, and she's talking like this. I'm going like, that's not Leia.
Yeah. Well, that's her life decisions outside of Star Wars.
And Laura Dern. I mean, just going, no.
That's honestly my biggest complaint with all of The Last Jedi is I do agree that the Holdo Canto Bite thing feels pointless. And it could have been done in a way. And I've seen people sort of try to mix it and say, well, the whole movie's kind of about failure. And I'm like, like, sure, maybe, but not. But what? What's the point of that?
Yeah,
like,
and it loosely follows Empire's the dark one, right? The second one, the hero goes into darkness before coming out.
Right.
So I saw them starting with kind of a dark theme going, this is where we're going to break it and we're going to build it back up in the third one. So I do hope for good things, but I can't get the bad taste in my mouth.
Have any of you watched Mikey Newman's piece on it? He did this like 2-part video essay called How We Watch Star Wars. And
I did not. That sounds good.
One of the interesting things he goes into is sort of like how fan perception changes. Like he goes into like, well, when Phantom Menace came out, everyone talked about how great it was, and then over time we've sort of gone like, no. And then, but the reverse sort of happened with Empire. When Empire came out, people, from what the critic review and the audience reviews, was very mixed. People weren't real big on it until Return of the Jedi came out and sort of set right a lot of things for people.
Wow, see, I don't remember that at all, dude. I was in 8th grade when Empire came out, and we were all on fire about Empire. I don't remember hearing anything negative, and I went and saw Phantom Menace, and I don't remember hearing much positive other than from Rob Liefeld, which I sat there and had lunch with him. I go, "This is a dog." He's all, "Go easy, man." I'm all, "No, it is terrible." We were so excited to get a new Star Wars. It was just so I don't remember it was kind of good, then got kind of bad. And I don't remember the Empire was panned. No, it was universally loved.
Well, when Mikey, watch the video on it because he goes through the critic reviews and stuff on it. Like he was showing how reviews were very mixed.
Sure.
And how it sort of subverted a lot of things that audience was, because you were in 8th grade, so I don't. Yeah. You may not have been like, let me go look for the author.
But man,
critic reviews.
When I saw that Vader was Luke's dad, my heart just dropped. It was and where's that, in Last Jedi? There's no moment of like, good Lord, what is my universe is turned upside down. It's like Kylo is half good for about 30 seconds, then he goes bad. Then they no.
I did freak out in the movie theater when she grabbed that lightsaber and they started fighting together. I was like, but then I was like, instantly, like, I was like, I don't want Kylo to be good though, so please stop.
Oh, yeah. Well, there was a moment there where there was a through line of a change, and we're going, oh man, that's kind of cool. And I did prefer that they would stay together and go rebel on both sides. That would be interesting. But they peeled her off, and it's like they couldn't hold the story for more than 15 minutes, their own story.
I liked all those decisions, but I've just come to like the place with that movie
empirically wrong. This is math. This is not opinion. This is math.
Yes. It's funny. I actually had dinner with some friends a couple weeks ago, and my friend didn't care much for the movie in the theater, but he's watched it a couple times. He's like, I think I'm starting to come around on it. And then my other friend's just like, I really don't like it. And we were all having dinner together, and I wanted to bring up some of the stuff from the behind the scenes making of it. And his wife looks at me and says, we can't talk Star Wars at the dinner table. Like, it's just that movie, like, it was such a joke, but it was like that movie's become such a, like, this divisive thing among Star Wars fans, and it's just kind of funny. And it's just like, I don't know. It's a movie. Yeah. Like, if you don't like it, you don't like it. If you do, you do. But I do really admire. I think he tried to take some bold steps, but I also understand, like, sometimes that pisses people off. And
I don't mind bold,
because that was the knock on this.
But you have to take the right steps.
I feel like the moment they really screwed up was, and I get why he did it when I hear him explain it. For me, was killing Luke in the end. Like, I think if he had left, like if he had just taken up the mantle, and we knew Episode 9, he was going to be there and he was going to be doing things, and not as a Force ghost, I think people might have. It just, the movie took away everything by the end of it. It was like all your expectations gone. And it's just going to do its own thing, and it just left nothing for anybody, which I personally liked, but I understand why others would be not.
You like taking my things away from me. You're a bad man.
I'm like, hey man,
and you know he'll come
it's okay
back
to move
as a
on.
Force ghost anyways. He'll be a ghost. He'll come back.
Yeah. Well, there's an interview where Mark Hamill just looks at the camera. It's like, I'm happy to destroy your childhood. And I'm like, seems like you weren't, though, based on your interviews. You were not happy with
That's
the
right.
decisions.
He wasn't early on. He came on real quick. He probably got reminded of some kind of a contractual clause not to criticize.
Well, based on the way I've seen him in the interviews, he was just being honest and like, I read it, I didn't care for it. He's like, but as I've worked with Ryan he's like, I get what he's doing, but now we've taken these comments because there's such a mixed review and it's been inflated into like Mark Hamill hates Star Wars. It's like, I don't think that's what happened. I think it was just he didn't care for it at the beginning. I don't know, whatever.
Well, whatever. I don't care if he likes it or not. I don't like it, even if he loves it. If he was on board with
what difference does it make?
He's just another guy.
Exactly. What do you guys think? All y'all just staying out of the Star Wars bonfire.
No comment.
No, I also have some thoughts about the new Star Wars movies. First thing is, I think there's no way they're going to make a decent third part. And especially not J.J. Abrams, because he cannot end stories. He can build...
He can build about the mystery, and then
he can build up mystery. He can make his mystery box trick. That's what he's good at. But he couldn't for his life end a story in a decent way. I've never seen it happen in one of his movies.
Sure.
And especially not with what was done with The Last Jedi. It's impossible to fix, if you ask me. And what I'm shocked about is actually that what presumably is the most valuable IP on the planet currently, how I don't know. I'm missing the, in German I could curse a lot, but
what, it's weird because in German even when you recite poetry it sounds like cursing.
Yeah, that's true. Now the thing is that I just can't believe, but my impression is that they started to create this trilogy without having a plan for the trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty clear after watching The Last Jedi with all the stuff they just ruined, basically, or cut off, that there was no plan for the whole trilogy, and this is something that I just cannot get my mind around, because that's the most important story IP on the planet. At least of pop culture, I would say. And you don't have a plan to make the last trilogy of that? Yeah. I mean, that's and you are Disney with all the money you could ever have, and you're not able to hire some decent screenwriters and actually think about the thing? I mean, that's so embarrassing.
So
that's so embarrassing.
That's a critique of Kathleen Kennedy and all the leadership at Disney. Is they should have written that whole trilogy out before they made the first one. They should have had the beats down, and unless these were the beats that Johnson was following.
Yeah, and
I know Steven likes it with me, so
much.
Steven, don't let me get handled over here. I know you liked it.
And I'm back. What are we talking about?
Star Wars.
It's not cool, man. It's not cool. Don't let me be on the edge of it.
If it keeps going in this pattern, the last one will end with Luke waking up and it was all a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bobby Ewing thing.
Exactly.
See, but
Michael will be on here defending it, going, "No, this time that's a really good move. This time that's really it's artistically deep. Everyone talks about it, but no one actually does it. And this time, Abrams had the balls to actually do it."
So actually, I do have a thought on the idea that Abrams doesn't finish anything, and it would be that Abrams hasn't finished anything. And so, like, if you go to Lost, Abrams didn't. Lost. He created Lost, but he's not the person who had the ending. That he was there for like the pilot, he built it, and then Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse went and made that thing. Yeah. The only one you could really point at and say, did he not do a good job with, really would be Alias, because he was, I think, involved in that from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, I like Alias a lot too.
But outside of that, he's really not.
What about 8mm?
Huh? I liked 8mm. I like that too.
Which one?
8mm.
A movie?
You mean Super 8? The alien one? The alien one?
Super 8, you mean?
Super 8. Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah, Super 8.
It's 8mm is about step films. I don't think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. There's, I was mixing that up.
No, I actually love.
But I started liking Super 8, and it started as a very nice homage to 80s movies and to E.T. and everything, right down to the soundtrack, but it just didn't finish in a satisfying way. I just saw stupid tanks driving through a small American town and everything getting. The end.
Daniel, you are literally crushing Michael's heart right now.
Honestly, I don't care, because I'm like, I like what I like and I don't what I don't, just like everybody else. I don't, but I really like Super 8 a lot. I think it's a really good movie.
I liked it too. I liked it a lot.
I've been defending M. Night Shyamalan for 10 plus years. I'm bulletproof at this point. I'm just sort of like, I like what I like, and other people don't like it. That's fine too. But
now, I think I personally can boil down my opinion about the new Star Wars movie to one single point. It actually is that they are not intuitive anymore. And this is such a shame, because for me, the Star Wars movies, the classic ones, and especially the first one, A New Hope, is the textbook example of an intuitive movie. And you were talking about, you were comparing Snoke to Emperor Palpatine and stuff like that. And the thing is, you never had to explain anyone in the audience who the Emperor was. It was clear from the moment when he came on screen for the first time. And that was in Empire Strikes Back. And it was even more clear when he came on screen in Return of the Jedi. And the thing is, when we enter The Force Awakens, we start with the very confusing question, what the heck the First Order is. What is this stuff that shouldn't be there because the Empire was destroyed? Why is the Empire back there? And I know all the explanations for that and all the reverse engineering of, or what's it called when you retcon stuff, I know all that, but it doesn't make intuitive sense, and that is the biggest problem. And
how can you sell books though, then, Daniel?
What?
I said, how can you sell books then? Because they've explained. So I'm being silly, because I agree with that statement. I think that they dropped us into a thing where we're just supposed to accept that all this weird stuff has happened with really no indication as to how or why it matters, or at least there's some indications given in the original trilogy of what's going on. But it's sort of like they've chosen to take this route of explaining what the First Order is through the books, which they've done in a couple of them, like explain how the First Order got started. So I'm agreeing with you to some extent by being silly about it.
The First Order.
The First Order. And for me, that waters down storytelling if stuff is not intuitive. And there are genres for that, There are genres like mystery movies and all the stuff where it's part of the idea that you have to find out about that stuff, and that you're left with little to no information for some time, and you expect that to be resolved at some point. But in a Star Wars movie, I do not expect to have to. I expect to know what the roles of the people are. And of course you have those people like Lando Calrissian that seem to be a good guy at first, and then they are kind of a traitor, but then they become a good guy. Okay, I get that. These are characters, but the big currents, I always think about storytelling in energy distribution terms. I'm a huge believer of the preservation of energy, this physical law. And the thing is, you can apply all that stuff to storytelling too. And I just can't make my peace with stories where the energy is not distributing in the way that it should.
Sure.
And that's what Doug refers to when he says it's math, I think, because some stuff is just it's aesthetic rules that exist to some extent.
Yeah, but
Daniel, did you feel down on Force Awakens then when you saw it?
Very much, because again, it was built on a plot point, this silly slow race that is absolutely ridiculous. And this is a complete against the law of preserving energy. And the thing is, they break the rule themselves in the movie. I mean, isn't it ridiculous that you have a big starship fleeing from an even bigger starship? Obviously, the bigger starship cannot go faster than the one that is persecuted. Okay, that might be possible. But how could a small ship from the persecuted ship just jump off it, make a hyperspace jump, go to some silly casino planet, making some fun over there, and then just coming back with something and land on that ship? I mean, if that's possible, wouldn't it be possible to launch some small ships from the persecuting vessel and just fly over to the smaller thing and just attack it? What's about? And this doesn't make sense.
You're talking about The Last Jedi now, or The Force Awakens?
I was talking about Force Awakens. I said,
no, I know you were, but
did you feel?
Oh, sorry, I confused that too. Yeah, The Force Awakens. My main problem with The Force Awakens is that the whole New Order thing feels not logical, and it's not plausible, and it's not. It doesn't make any sense. I would expect a new Star Wars movie after The Return of the Jedi to start with the evil forces in a very different variant than we saw it, and it would have been a wonderful chance, to say, okay, now we start a trilogy where the good guys are the big organization, the New Republic and stuff, and where the bad guys are the small group that tries to break the system, just like the rebels were in the original trilogy. You could have done a lot of cool stuff around that, but no, they kind of just repeat what the old movies did, and this is for me the basic thing that breaks it all for me. And I won't say that there are not some nice moments in even in both new Star Wars films. There's the fan service and the nice moments, but there is, through this basic failure of the basic story construction, for me, the whole thing is just not going around just from the beginning, and it's just not fixable in my view, if you do something like that.
If you don't like it, that is.
Yeah. No.
Because I'm just like, I like it. I don't have a problem with it. Like it's fine. But I also look at all the Star Wars movies, and I think they're kind of. I think all the Star Wars movies are kind of a mess.
No,
and I'm fine with it.
No,
I do think they kind of are.
No.
But I say that as a person who loves them. Daniel. Like, I'm not saying it as a person who's mad at it. I just think they are.
The thing is, you heard that argument pretty often. You say you have those, these comparisons when someone complains that there are too many stupid jokes in The Last Jedi, which is the case, then they say, okay, but you have stupid jokes in A New Hope too. But the thing is, in A New Hope, they maintain a balance between comedy and serious tones. They just have a balanced mood, and you can throw this balance off very quickly if you are not, if you're not sensible enough. and I think they weren't sensible enough to create the right mood for the new Star Wars movies. That's my opinion. For me, they ruined Star Wars to this point. But fortunately, they cannot ruin the classic movies. They will stay there forever, and that's
right.
Good.
I just downloaded the despecialized version of Star Wars.
I have them.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
I didn't send those to you.
Oh, I didn't know you had them.
I made I've made like Mike Mayhack and some other folks copies of them. They're great.
Yeah, they are.
What is that?
It's called the despecialized version. It's
they removed all the extra junk that ruined.
Okay, I see. Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's kind of amazing.
They're really cool.
It's kind of amazing to watch Star Wars again, and it's called Star Wars, not A New Hope, and and seeing all that, like just watching the Death Star sequence with the models again, I was like, why did he screw this up? Like, I know this is old, but it's still so much better. The pacing and everything fits better. Everything is just better. I like Harmy's, the guy who created the despecialized edition, sort of perspective on it. He's just like, look, this is a piece of film history that needs to be preserved, and why don't we have this? Like, it's not so much about being a jerk about, you can have the special editions if you want, but why would you not make this available to people to watch it in its unaltered form? But it's worth hunting down a copy of it if you have the time to just download it.
Well, I'm shocked. Have the VHS cassettes of the original Star Wars movies, so
I'm shocked Disney hasn't shut them down on it. To be frank, it's amazing they haven't shut them down on it.
Yeah. But, the nice thing about these, Daniel, is you can get them in full HD. Like,
that's a point. But did you notice maybe with other movies that it's not always a good idea to see classic movies from the 80s in HD or as a Blu-ray edition? I have several examples of movies that I think look only nice when you see through the filter of the VHS system, and with the low resolution, with the color distortions and stuff like that. Because one example would be Legend by Ridley Scott. You see a lot of the makeup effects and stuff like that. You see that in high resolution versions much more obviously than you do it in the classic VHS versions. And also the Alien movies, the other Ridley Scott stuff. I think that there is stuff where too much information is just not good. And I think that the Hobbit movies were a very good example of that too. With this higher frame rate and the high resolution, it just wasn't feeling like fantasy anymore from a visual.
Yeah. Well, I especially feel that about the Hobbit movie. Those were terrible. I saw those in the theater. Whatever that 48 or whatever it is frame rate, it just looked awful.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, the thing is, I had two problems with it. The first, the higher frame rate has a benefit for the 3D effect. That, of course, is much less eye straining, I would say. But the aesthetic effect of it is devastating, I think. Even to the point that they just aren't able to create props that can hold up to this high resolution. Everything looked like a prop. Everything looked like it was just made for a movie and not something that would actually live in a world.
Can we all at least agree that those were just bad movies? Not necessarily because of that, but the story writing was just terrible.
Yeah.
It's just bad writing.
That's also a problem, yeah.
I only saw the middle one. I didn't see the first or the second of the Hobbit ones.
The first is the most tolerable. They get worse. They just get so much worse as you go.
That's true.
And I love the creative fun he had with Lord of the Rings. It's tiny additions and tiny things and shrinking things and making things simpler. I loved what he did on the Lord of the Rings. I have a lot of respect for that trilogy. But
yeah,
the new Hobbit stuff, man, that was awful. It was just terrible.
He just couldn't help himself, man. It's just.
Yeah.
Like he just couldn't help himself from just throwing everything at it, and the conflict of the story just wasn't big enough to warrant all that stuff. Like, you're just going to the mountain, you're getting the thing, you're coming home. Why is this 3 movies long?
Yeah. Why are you making a giant, your father's giant statue to kick it and blow up lava on Smog? It flies away.
Yeah.
It's just horrible.
Me and my roommate were discussing that film because we were seeing how like when you had like actual, like in the Lord of the Rings series, when you had like actual people fighting with actual swords in actual masks and costumes, it felt like someone was in danger and like you're really kind of nervous. But then when it had like Legolas, like this orc blender, he would just run through a crowd and just all these orcs would fall, all these CGI orcs would just fall down dead at his blades. We were starting to realize that the stakes of the story were kind of were changing as a result because all the moments were so well performed and like choreographed that you kind of knew when the story was going to change. Like you weren't actually afraid that the characters was going to get hurt in that fight. It was just kind of a spectacle. And we actually made a term up to describe this phenomenon, which I think happens mostly in CGI movies. We decided to call it stakes barreling. Where, do you guys remember that scene where the Hobbit gets stuck in the barrel and then he's just bouncing down the waterfall on top of all those orcs?
Yeah.
It's this idea that like you've taken the stakes of the scene, what's important and what the audience is like scared of or cares about, and you've just kind of put it inside of a barrel, and like as a result nothing can harm it or like get in its way, or like they're not truly worried that the stakes are being threatened, which is a real shame, because that's actually like where that's where drama comes from. That's where like an exciting story comes from, is when they care about something and those stakes are getting actually threatened by real threats. But the CGI just undermined all that. Like, at least the way the CGI was used, not CGI in general. It's just the way it was used. It was just like, here's a spectacle and there's nothing really to care about in this scene. So just wait till next scene, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So you know where I think those movies really were set up for failure primarily was because the original trilogy came out first. And so like the Lord of the Rings trilogy has a tone to it, right? Like it's a very serious, involved tone that's great. And The Hobbit was never supposed to feel like that. It was like the books don't have that. The book doesn't have that feeling. And so specifically, probably because you brought Peter Jackson in to do it, which I kind of feel bad for the guy. Like, I know he bloated it out, but I've kind of listened to some explanation of what happened there, and he kind of got a bad deal.
Yeah, he did.
The rights issue that happened.
Guillermo.
Yeah, and Guillermo, I kind of feel bad for Guillermo because he moved to New Zealand to do it, and there was a whole rights thing going on. He was like, I got to go. Like, I've agreed to do other things, and we haven't figured this rights issue out. And so then by the time the rights issue got out, he had to move back to the States to go do other things. It was just a mess. But because the Hobbit movies are trying to feel like a bridge into the Lord of the Rings in a way I don't feel like the Hobbit book does to the books, The Lord of the Rings, it doesn't match the tone. And if they would have captured the tone of the book, which is supposed to be playful and adventurous, and still found a way to make it feel like it fits, he just couldn't help himself from trying to make it feel like a movie that bridged into his other trilogy, when the Hobbit book doesn't do that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they're different and completely different. I think that's the biggest thing that was going to make it fail, is because they were trying to bridge it into the original trilogy instead of just making it its own thing that has like touchstones or whatever into it. But also the writing is not great.
That's a very good point. And the thing that Steven said is actually, personally, that's exactly what I mean when I say that I look at storytelling from an energy distribution standpoint, and the law of preserved energy. You can set up your own rules in a film or in a story. You can say that some things are just in my world. Some things are just the way I constructed them, and then everything has to abide those rules. And that's the problem when you have stories that are unintuitive, because people do not get the rules just from the beginning. You have to explain them, and then when you explain the rules, you should not break them. And these are the mechanics that break all kinds of stories, that people are not able to establish meaningful rules or working rules at all, not explaining them properly, and then thinking that this is only one aspect and they can make up for it with silly jokes. And that's just not the case. You have to have a good set of rules for a story, because the only thing people are interested in when they listen to stories, or when they read stories, or when they however they consume stories, is they want to understand the rules and want to see how it applies to their own lives. That's the thing. Stories is telling us something about the world, about the universe, and where our place in it is. And if you tell people stories about a universe where the rules are meaningless or inconsistent, or basically meaningless is a good term, then the people will not care for this story. And that's what Steven said. We don't care about characters if they are able to fight and don't be harmed, and just can slay down legions of enemies. Then no trick will ever make us care for them when they are in a duel with like an enemy or something like that, because we know that obviously in another part of the story it was established that this is an unbeatable character, that he does not really have to fear conflict on the battlefield. And then when you try to raise the tension in a duel or something like that, you get into this contradiction, and the energy is not preserved. And you have to preserve that energy.
Agreed.
And on the weekend, I saw Kung Fu Panda again, and I again noticed that this is a very solid movie.
Oh, yeah.
That is a really good, polished story. I mean, it has, again, you could argue from the energy preservance standpoint that, like in every other Kung Fu movie, you have this weird someone learns Kung Fu over the weekend thing, which just is bending the energies very hard. But apart from that, it is a really good movie. It has all the classic
all
characters,
because of Jason.
Clear. What about that?
Especially that intro animation scene. I mean,
that's rad. That's just rad.
Did you do that?
Yeah, that was the stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
That is really, really very good. And I clearly remember that everyone who saw it the first time thought, "Oh man, would it be cool to have a movie in that style alone?"
Yeah.
The thing I like about all of the Kung Fu Panda movies is all of those stories surprised me. Like, I thought I had it figured out, and it always took some kind of a turn or a twist in a really interesting way that I didn't expect. I like all three of the movies.
Hey Jason, did you work with Rad Seacrest? Did you ever know Rad Seacrest?
Yeah, I know him. Yeah, I worked.
Oh, cool. I took a class from him on anatomy, and I've always been an admirer of him from the Flight comics, but also just like his not rapid, but just how much he's improved over the years. Like if you look at his work 10 years ago compared to now, it's just awesome. I'm like, dang, how do you get so cool?
I haven't followed him for very long, other than when I met him. So I'm not familiar with his old stuff.
Oh, do you have Flight Volume 1?
I do. I did. I think I still do.
Okay, you should open it up and look at his story from the comic he had in there, because you'll be blown away by how different his art is these days.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm always fascinated with artists who improve, in leaps and bounds. I know he's probably filled up like 60 or 70 sketchbooks over the years of just, studies and stuff. But so I've been following him for a while. But anyway, I think he's a really cool, rad guy. Rad is rad.
Yeah, he is rad.
I took, changing topics off of that, I took Jake Parker's character design class this week from SVS Learn.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
And it was really good. Like, I mean, it's a short little 2-hour lecture that he gives, but I known that you can, sort of do different things with proportions in a way that sort of conveys character. So like the South Park design, giant head, small body. But he did a really good job of saying how head lengths can convey character design. It's something I'd not spent much time on. So I usually just adhere to the natural order of proportions. And since just sort of doing that, going I just want to try designing a character that's only 5 heads tall, but follows these normal kind of proportions, it's really opened up character design in a way that I've never really toyed around with. It's something simple that probably you guys just take for granted, but I was like, what? Why haven't I done this before? I've always just done the whole Marvel this many head type things. So I've been kind of working through some of their classes recently.
That sounds awesome. I want to take some classes from Jake.
Especially
we should get him back on the show and have him talk to us about all of his secrets.
Jake, tell us how you do everything. And then he'd say, well, I have a class on that. It's called How to Draw Everything.
He gets back and we're like, Jake, we launched a Kickstarter for you. It's called How to Draw Everything by Jake Parker. We need you to go. We raised $150,000 for you. We need you to go make this book right now.
And it better be good.
And it better be on time.
Yeah.
Hope you don't mind, but there's a lot of Kickstarter people already mad at you for it's only been 3 days now since the Kickstarter ended.
Man, I went into the comments on that thing. There were some mad people.
Kickstarter donors can be very demanding. Very demanding. It's
I'm really, I got the one book I did on Kickstarter I already had completed, so I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah. I've never run a Kickstarter until the book's done. I don't need the pressure of finishing the thing on top of doing the Kickstarter itself. You can just do like Doug and do 1 billion paintings for people.
Yeah, that's all. That was easy.
Yeah, I noticed you must have finished that, right? You're not making little watercolor paintings.
Yeah, now I'm just kind of nickel and diming, finding out who didn't get theirs, and I've got about 4 or 5 donors didn't get theirs. So now I got to decide if I'm going to make them a new one, or if I'm going to wait, or start doing tracking numbers, or if I'm just going to give them a refund. And usually I'll probably just give them a refund. Because I don't want to do the work now. I'm done with painting. I'm not doing more watercolors, guys.
No more.
Or it'll never end, and they're always from other countries, where the mailing system may not be that great. And it's just like, this thing vanished. And I'm like, oh man. Because I've sent multiple sketchbooks out to people before, and the second one didn't deliver, and the third one didn't deliver. I'm just like, dude. And then you got to give them a refund. So now I'm just on refund on the first round.
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever we have an order in the shop from Brazil, I normally pack up 2 packages right away, because in one of 2 cases, the package will vanish somewhere in Brazil. So
yeah,
really not even to send stuff there.
I have I had one shipped back to me that I had to reship to a guy, but thankfully he paid for some of the shipping for the second time. He's like, yeah. He just was never notified by the post office. It was there, and I kept looking at it. It was saying it needed action from him, and I was like, I'm gonna just assume he's gonna figure it out. And then I went to go check my mail, and it was in there. Sure enough, but he was pretty cool about it. That's so far been the only book I've had anyone write me back about. So I guess I'll take that. But I actually canceled my stamps.com account today, so I was like, that means the Kickstarter is officially done. I don't need this account anymore. Then it'll just be whether I run another one soon.
Guys, I heard from my editor, and she said that the Space Boy Volume 1 has been printed, and they look great, and she's going to send me a copy sometime soon, so I'm so excited to see what it looks like.
yeah,
Very cool.
Congratulations.
Are pre-orders already up on Amazon?
Yeah, you can pre-order it. I haven't I haven't started my pre-order campaign yet, but there's going to be prizes and stuff for people who pre-order the book. But
cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. The book, like, it's so weird because I've drawn probably like 2,000 pages of Space Boy, and I don't think I've seen like any of them on paper. It's all been pixels. It's all been zeros and ones, and I don't think I know how much work I've done. And it's gonna be nice to be able to hold it and be like, oh, that's heavy. That's a thing.
I love printed work compared to pixel stuff, and there's nothing like it. Book, going through that first book, you open it up, full of surprises. Some stuff didn't turn out the way you meant, but it's real. It's just real.
Do you guys? This is kind of weird, but I like to like open them up and just smell them, and I feel like there's just a good book smell that I'm like, oh yeah, this reminds me of this printing of this book experience that I once had, and
I absolutely do that repeatedly.
So
maybe in a way that's a little bit creepy.
Hey guys, I gotta jump. My family's home from school.
All right.
God bless you.
Hi, Doug.
All right, bye.
Take care, man. Bye.
Hold on. Last Jedi stinks.
Oh man,
Steven, you needed to help defend me.
I actually don't dare to look into the comments.
See, Steven's still being quiet, like he didn't like the movie.
Oh man. Yeah, that's. I don't know. Did you guys? Did you ever ask you if you would have been able to write a good third Star Wars trilogy? If someone came to you and said, "Hey, we saw your comic work, and you have some decent writing skills, and for some reason that the universe will not disclose, we decided to ask you if you want to write the next Star Wars trilogy." Would you guys think that it would have been a job you could have done properly?
Is this a question from the comments or a question that you have?
No. That's a question that I just came up with.
I would certainly want to take a stab at it, although expecting that I would probably make a lot of people mad by the end of it. Just it sort of feels like Star Wars is just in that space now where it's hit this space where people are gonna hate it or they're gonna love it, and like even The Force Awakens, for as much as people seem to enjoy it from the critics and from people watch it, it gets a ton of criticism. I would do it just because I'm a fan. I think it'd be fun to play in that world, but I think it's just going to be so hard for people to really make people happy. I mean, even George couldn't make people happy. So,
yeah, I couldn't make a good Star Wars film, but I could make a really good Stephen McCraney presents Star Wars film.
All right.
I don't think I would be able to do it, just because it's not something that I came up with, so I'm not as invested in the characters. I look at Star Wars more like I want to see what someone else does. You know, more than I want to make fan fiction of it. You know?
I mean, on some level, I kind of feel for those guys, like when they know that they're stepping their toe in water that's going to piss a lot of people off. Like,
yeah.
And it's just, I think I've just sort of, like, I don't, like, even the prequels, which I don't like at all, and they've not aged well to me. And mostly because I think George Lucas just, like, forgot that he was making a movie that's supposed to lead into 3 movies that already existed. Just seemed like a thing he should have kept in mind. But I also, like, I'm willing to just let it go. Like, I know some people are like, they don't exist. I hate them. They're worst. I'm just sort of like, I didn't like them, and I move on with my life. Like, but I had arguments with people for like a year plus about why they didn't like The Force Awakens, and I'm like, dude, it's fine. It's okay. You don't have to like it. You can move on with life. It's just a movie. But it's like, it's been interesting seeing the arguments that come up with The Last Jedi, because I left it and I really liked it, and I was actually really taken back when I got online and was like wanting to excitedly talk about it with folks, and was so surprised at how negative, or not even negative, mixed. I mean, the reactions, I would say, are mixed rather than exclusively negative things were. I just didn't have that feeling at all when I left it. I really enjoyed it. But again,
yeah, that's actually, and this is something that's really bothering me. My first reaction when I came from the screening and came home, and my wife asked me how the movie was, I said that it actually was good and enjoyable, and that I had fun, and I experienced kind of the same thing when I was later convinced that it is actually bad, and that's something that bothered me. I wonder if I would have developed that opinion about the movie if I had been in a vacuum, you know, not knowing what everyone else was thinking about it.
Yeah.
But all arguments are making sense.
I think like these movies have hit a level where I in general, I think, like, in one respect, like, movie viewers have gotten smarter in a way that's really good. Like, we're being more critical about the things that we watch, but I also think we're becoming very unforgiving of things that don't matter as much. I don't know. It's I like I was saying, like that movie A Quiet Place. Like, there's all this stuff in A Quiet Place where the movie doesn't explain itself to you. And it doesn't explain to you, like, how these creatures got here, why this attacking, they're able to just destroy all of humanity, and why sound works in a certain way and doesn't work in other ways. And people are coming out of this movie asking all these questions, but I'm like, the movie's not asking that question. And so is it the job of the movie to sort of like spend a bunch of time explaining to the audience how the rules of the world work, even though the movie's not interested in those rules? Like, I don't know. It's I think we just watch things with a somewhat of a critical lens, and I think that's amplified like 1,000 times higher with Star Wars, where the expectation is just so big. And the funny thing is, like, I left The Force Awakens not really liking it the first time. I was kind of like, kind of let down. But over time, I really grew to like that movie a lot. I think it's, like I've said about The Force Awakens, it's not the best Star Wars movie, but I think it's the most entertaining Star Wars movie beginning to end. Like, it's just extremely an entertaining movie. And watching it with my kids, like, especially my son, who's just like, that's Star Wars to him, and he loves it. That's really exciting and fun to see happen. But I don't know what the answer is to that one.
Well, I'm curious to see that Quiet Place movie, because the trailer looked really neat, and
it's so good.
I haven't heard anything about it, so don't.
I won't.
But I like
it.
I actually like what you're saying about it, that it doesn't explain these things, because
yeah, me too.
I guess if there's one one criticism that I've heard more than anything else about my work, is that I don't explain enough stuff, or I leave it with unanswered questions that people want to know the answer to. Like, Like in Sith are like, what are the Weebles? Where do they come from? Why are they there? What do they represent? I'm like, you guys, serious. It's not called Weebles, you know?
Yeah.
It's not even about that. It's just kind of a demonstration that you're in a different world.
Right.
And it's interesting.
Well, like some of the commentary that was made on Star Wars is like I was making, like, people were like, who's Phasma? Where'd she come from? I was like, no one did anything with Boba Fett. No one got mad. Like, if you wanted to know the history of Boba Fett, you had to buy trading cards that had his history on the backs of them. And like, when people are like, we don't know Snoke's backstory. Yeah, you had to get 3 other movies that explain Palpatine's backstory, and you had to wait 20 years. So it's like, to me, it's just, the arguments against it, I don't fully understand, because I think they come from a way we've been trained to watch those series of movies that is not consistent with the way we watched them to begin with. Like, I think the original trilogy does a great job of having mystery that they leave the audience to figure out, and the prequels kind of wrecked that, honestly. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
I think it's just a different kind of movie. I mean, you can go to Star Trek to get the scientific definitions of how some alien species works, Maybe they don't do it in Star Trek anymore. But,
no, now that J.J. Abrams did it, they just blow stuff up.
Yeah. No.
Which is entertaining, but it's not traditional Star Trek, I guess. But I'm actually, one of the reasons I've decided to go on and do some of these smaller things is because I'm wrestling with some of those story blocks and making sure in the story I'm working on that I'm answering its world well and forming a world that makes sense and that the ideas are consistent. So I think those things are important. I just think it's interesting what things we latch on to and which things we don't. Like how I can watch it and not be bothered by those things, but like Daniel watches it and it frustrates him.
Well, going back to the what questions should be answered in putting together this class for the CGMA thing, I kind of talked about it a little bit, and my opinion on it is like, you go outside and you take a walk and you see a beautiful tree or flowers or birds or whatever, and you can enjoy them without knowing how they were, what they're created with,
why does everything need a backstory
and what they're thinking, and you can just enjoy things that you don't understand at all. You look out in the telescope and you see this craziness. We have no idea what we're looking at, but we can still enjoy it, and that's part of the reason why I think it's nice to have that mystery, is because I think it's more like real life, not answering all these questions that aren't the point of the story.
I think the key difference. So I read Howl's Moving Castle. I read the book, and the film was based off of this British novel. I had no idea it existed, but it was a delightful book. And there was this really weird thing that Miyazaki cut out, but I would say that most of the most brilliant ideas in the film came from the book. So I was like, this is pretty awesome, because I thought a lot of that was Miyazaki's brilliant. But anyway, there was this really weird scene where do you guys know there's that black notch on the doorknob that he turns to kind of enter into the abyss?
Yeah.
In the book, when he takes Sophie through that door, and they end up on a roadway in front of this strange square house, and they walk inside, and there's these picture frames that are have living people inside of them that are moving around, and it slowly dawns on you that this is actually our world, and that Hal is kind of just this college kid who ran away to a magical dimension, and he has to come home every once in a while. And it was so wild. It was such a wild turn. And what I've been listening to more of this author's work, and she just does these super wild stuff. But one of the things I've learned is that it's not about what happens as much as whether your characters react realistically to it or not. Because we can, if something crazy happens, we're okay. We look to the characters to understand that, And if their characters react appropriately, we're like, okay, this is okay. And I think that often when storytelling breaks down, it's when the characters aren't reacting like they should. And that's when we go through and start picking it apart. Like if the character reaction is like realistic, then we're okay with a couple, unexplained things. But if the story, if the story starts falling apart and the characters don't act like real people, that's when we start going back and being like, hey, well, this couldn't have actually worked, and we're actually harsher with the story because the story was weak. I think stronger stories give we have more grace with, we're more merciful to them, I think. But when we're disappointed with the story, then we go back and we're like, and plus this was wrong, and plus this was not believable, and plus how did he even get over there?
Yeah.
But often when it's a great story, you're like, I'm okay with, them taking a couple liberties here and there just to get the story moving, because it was such a great story and the characters were real in it. So I think there's that aspect too, that we're harsh with stories that are not, fully, not good stories, I guess. We're a little harsh with weaker stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's a super important point, I think, because for me, for example, this is the main reason why I made my main character in my story invincible. I heard a lot of people, or some people say that it kind of lowers the stakes if the main character is actually invincible and you do not have to fear for him to, I don't know, die in a fight or whatever. But the main reason for me to do it was that no adult would take a young child on a very dangerous mission if he would expect that he could die. And that was my reason, because it would just be unnatural. That actually is earlier you talked about the Narnia series. I actually only know the first movie, so my opinion on that is very limited. But the one thing that bothered me when I saw that movie is that kind of everyone was expecting that children could lead a war, and this is something that just was not, that I could not comprehend. This made the complete story for me fall flat, because seeing the children on the battleground and seeing that it's natural for them, obviously, to yield weapons and fight, and that just didn't work for me. And this is the point. You have to make sure that your characters, at least your characters, have to react in a reasonable level, or in a way that you can understand. This can make up for a lot of leeway in the energy distribution of your universe, I would say.
Yeah.
That's actually, again, not to dig into spoilers, because I'm not here to ruin movies for you, Jason. But one of those, I'm not going to talk about specifics of the movie.
No,
but the criticisms that the people I've heard, which generally speaking, I think people really like it. But to me, the reason that movie works so well is that it's about characters that I care about. I care about what's happening to them within the story. And I'm more caught up in that than I am all this other nonsense that people are trailing off on. Compelling characters usually seems to overlap a lot of that sort of stuff as it goes, I think. But it's interesting though, Daniel, when you're talking about the kids and the war thing, I'm reading, I think it may struggle just because it's being translated from a book into a movie, where I think we add a certain gravity to a movie than we would a book, whereas I think the book reads very much just like a fairy tale encounter. You know what I mean? It's told much more whimsically, and the movie has to sort of add dramatic heft to it in a way that the book doesn't. In fact, there's actually a lot of dramatic heft in the book. It's not made a big deal of, where I think we maybe watch the movie with a different lens.
Yeah.
There's a lot of redemption in that final battle with the boy Edmund, who kind of betrays all of them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I drug us all into the Last Jedi conversation.
Yeah,
I don't even know how we got there.
You gotta get it over with, because now we can't really retread this ground in later.
Yeah, we got it out of our systems.
Now we all know where we stand. Actually, I don't know where Jason stands. He stayed neutral. I know. I know where Steven stands.
Hey, Jason is the guy
similar to how Daniel
unsubscribe from, so he's doing good that not saying anything.
Well, so to ruin that, my opinion of it. I'm similar to how Daniel's approach was, where I went and saw the movie, and then I was like, yes, there's some good stuff in there. There's parts I really liked, and I think I liked it. And then I went home, and people would ask me what I think about it, and I'd be like, yeah, I think I liked it.
Yeah.
And then after a while of just like not really knowing how I felt, I started hearing some opinions. I was like, oh yeah, that kind of bothered me actually, now that I think about it. And then at this stage, I'm like, I don't really care to see any other Star Wars movies. I'll stick with the old ones, because I get what I want out of those. But I don't know. I'll probably see another one if it comes out.
I imagine everyone who didn't like it's probably still going to give that last one a chance. But
yeah, of course. And if it's on the complete train wreck, I mean, you've got to see it.
I think what's more interesting in the conversation, less about The Last Jedi and more about the way I think the conversation sort of happened. Like it happened with Ready Player One too. Like, so Ready Player comes out, and there's this whole section of,
I haven't seen it yet, so don't spoil that one either.
I'm not talking about the story itself, okay, but the reactions to it, which is sort of like this there's like an art snobbery thing happening within the art community with some of these things, like with The Last Jedi, with Ready Player One, where like if you like it, you're sort of looked down on. And I can't tell if it's all in jest or not, but like there was just I felt like an unfair level of criticism against Ready Player One that I didn't quite understand. It was like this, we're all judging this guy for this book that he wrote when he was out of work because there was a writer's strike going on in Hollywood, and he thought, hey, I'll be productive. And he made this thing where all like, look at this nostalgia nonsense, garbage. And it just becomes now a conversation slandering the author, and then people picking on it. I don't know. It's just it's like it's a movie, guys. Like, you can just not like it. Like you can just not like it. You can just move on with your life. There's plenty of entertainment out there that if you didn't like it, you can move on to the next thing. It's fine. But there's like these. I like The Last Jedi got to the point where it was like it was exhausting to talk about. I wanted to talk about it with people, but it was like people got so mad one way or the other about it, and I'm just like, at the end of the day, to me, it's just a movie. I'll go to bed and wake up the next day. Like it'll be fine. Is that just me? Am I not taking Star Wars seriously enough? Do I need to get mad about it?
I think the internet has made things worse, and I think like in our culture we take, because we're like a consumer culture and like we worship, what we consume. It's like an expression of our identity. What we consume in the media we like and what we don't like. And so when you say something online like, oh, I like this, then everyone comes out and they're like, well, I didn't like it. And we say, oh, I didn't like this. They're like, I like it. And there's a real and
like, cool.
Like, if you say you didn't like it, it's like you've attacked them personally, because again, our identities are getting like mixed up with the things that we consume. And and then on top of it, there's the internet, which kind of incentivizes inflammatory content. Like that's the stuff that goes to the top of feeds often. And what if you can get people to like a movie, that's okay, I guess. But if you can get people to argue about a movie, that is like the way to make a bestseller, is to get people to fight about it.
I just wanted to say that. I mean, imagine you have a movie that just everyone likes. I mean, that no one criticizes. I mean, this movie is out of cinemas in a blink. This is actually the thing that that always irritated me about the Miyazaki's work. I've never seen someone saying that his stuff is bad. It's just this. It seems to be just this universal thing that he's just doing great stuff. But at some point, someone said that that art that is not getting people arguing about it is not really art. It's weird how there's. I mean, I would still believe that he might just have found this magic spot where he can just be a genius and there's just nothing to argue about it. That would be nice if there was something like that, but it is weird, and in our current media ecosystem, it definitely is a problem if your stuff is just good and everyone likes it and everyone is happy and goes on to the to the next thing where you can argue because arguing is fun and stuff like that.
I don't know if it's fun.
I don't know. It is exciting. Maybe not fun, but it is exciting.
It's fun. Like I enjoy it when
people jump out of planes with a parachute. I don't know if they do it because it's fun.
Right.
It's terrifying.
But like an example, like for whatever reason, and I would venture, I'm possibly alone in this liking this particular film, but for whatever reason, I saw and I liked Batman versus Superman. There's things in it that I really like, but I didn't like Civil War. I thought Captain America Civil War was a bit of a mess. And I had a friend who really disagreed with me. He's like, Civil War is amazing and Batman vs. Superman is garbage. And I was like, okay, well, it's fine. It's cool, whatever. And he just kept harping on me. He's like, no, it's garbage. Why did you like this? Why did you like it? I'm like, dude. Yeah, I'm like, dude, just, it's fine. Like, you didn't like it, I liked it. And then finally, like, he just kept begging. Like, I just had to write out, like, here's why I don't like Civil War. And I just wrote a whole thing out, and then he just stopped talking to me. I'm like, what did you want from me? I'm like, I'm not saying it because I think it's not well made. I think that the premise of its conflict is flawed and unenjoyable and doesn't make sense. It loses its dramatic heft. And I felt like the premise of Batman vs. Superman, maybe not executed as slick or as fun, had a premise that I agreed with more and I understood the conflict. And that drove the way I appreciated that movie. And he just could not get it because he enjoyed that airport fight sequence too much, I guess. And
was that you, Steven?
No. I can't remember whether Steven liked it or not.
No,
can't remember if we got in that
I wasn't the
conversation.
friend who harped you, but I do remember we had like kind of a hard conversation because you and Josh were kind of on the same page, and then I felt all left out. But it's funny, like I think our insecurities kind of rise to the surface because we're like, well, do you think I'm dumb for liking this thing? Or,
well, that definitely happens, yeah.
You know,
like here, you guys, I respect all y'all, and I was the one person who actually defended The Last Jedi. So did that make me dumb?
Yeah, did that make
or
you
bad
feel
story?
Brave.
No, I don't, because I'm like, again, I'm like, I liked it. I don't know what I'm not going to defend the fact that I liked it. You know, I had an emotional response where I left it and I had a good time. You know, I don't want to destroy other people's view too. Like to my friend who was upset about the Civil War, I'm like, I don't want to make you not like something you didn't like. You know, not like something you liked. It's why would I want to? You went to a thing, you wanted to be entertained, you were entertained, and you left. And if you didn't, that's cool too. But why would you want to go out of your way to like tear it down for the people who enjoyed it? I don't. You know, it's just they enjoyed it. The end. It's whatever.
We can rebuild.
We'll stop talking about Star Wars.
No. I don't. You guys are fine.
I'm saying we can create a new environment where it's okay to talk about this stuff. You know, we can create a little healthy part of the internet.
That's right.
Called the Weekly Wednesday. What are we calling this again?
With Melvin.
Anyways,
Wednesday virtual studio.
Yeah, well, I hope you guys don't feel like, as we discuss these things, I hope you guys haven't felt like you're the odd person out or judged by what you said or anything like that.
Oh, absolutely not.
No.
Good.
No, it's fine.
I will say this is something I've never shared online. I've never been able to get into the Narnia stuff. I've always thought it was really boring. And
I feel that way about Lord of the Rings, the books.
I tried reading them, and I was just like, why? I don't get it. I don't get it. But everyone seems to like them.
You know, the thing is, I learned a lot from falling in love with H.P. Lovecraft stories, because this is, from a reading standpoint, maybe they are really boring, really complicated language, and I can't really explain why I only like certain stories of him very much. I will read them every few weeks before going to sleep, and it's so weird how you can become very specific with liking something very specific, and you can't even explain why. And I think this boils down to everyone's very special background and history, and what stuff you were influenced by, and the bells that are ringing in your head when you're reading something specific. I mean, that's really weird, but that's the way why we have this rich media diversity with all those stories and different kinds of flavors, because actually everyone has a very specific own opinion about stuff, and maybe and it's actually it's a little bit sad that with discussions nowadays it's oftentimes either you are against it or you are for it, and there's no middle ground. That's kind of I couldn't defend the stories that I like through argument. I can just say that I enjoy them for some weird reason.
Like, I'll sometimes get that comment from people, like on I don't know if it makes me sometimes feel like on social media, like I must like things other people don't like or something, but like where people will come in, they're like, I completely disagree with you on the movie choices you like. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't. All right. Does that mean I have bad taste or something? I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Like, it's because I imagine we probably agree
That's
on
another
a lot
thing
more
I
than
don't
we
like
disagree
about.
on.
That's another thing I don't like about the internet, is that, like, we don't. If you're talking face to face with that person, they'd be so much more polite and like. It's just a shame that like people will get riled up over voices on the internet, people that they don't know, like they'll go read words that make them mad. Like it's like these comments have been detached from the original people who said them. So there's a sense of like, what a shame to be made mad by people who you've never met in your life. Like. What a shame to be just thrown into rage by people you don't know. Like, they shouldn't have that power over you, But we're social creatures, and it feels personal really more often than not.
For sure.
I mean, in some cases, you make a living from those anonymous people on the internet. So why should
So we should tread lightly. There's some questions I found on the chat here.
This is probably where I'm gonna have to take my leave, guys. My family's ready to go dinner. So,
alrighty.
Thanks for letting me hang out.
See you, Michael.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Hey, Stephen, it's almost 2 hours, so let's ask some questions, and then we'll cut it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cut out.
Keeman asked, where'd Doug go? His kids got home, so he went to visit them. Malamik asks, have you ever made a great work of art that you loved at the time but hate now? What is it?
Interesting.
Is there anything you really regret making?
Well, I would say no. Actually, I think that everything I did in the past was up to what I was able back then, and I won't begrudge myself in hindsight for not being more capable at that time. So no, I think I'm happy with everything that I did through the years. It just showed the level that I were at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm bummed out about anything I've made in the past.
I have work that I cringe at a little bit where I'm like, oh, that was not drawn well.
Yeah.
But I still appreciate the interior of the work. And actually, it's kind of cool sometimes to pick up something you made 10 years ago and you don't remember quite all the beats.
Yeah.
And you get to read it and you're like, wow, because you didn't get to read it at the time with those fresh eyes. So yeah.
I made some short, very short comics for our school newspaper around 1995 or something like that. And I discovered them recently and read through them, and they were really, I thought they were really nice for what I was able to do back then. So yeah, no, you should not regret your stuff. You should just enjoy the fact that you might have learned something since then, and should enjoy your stuff from back then.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I made a comic in high school called Phobos, and then I moved to LA, and I kind of gave up comics because I was just like, this is for kids, and I need to be a professional now. And so 10 years passed, and I just never even considered comics because it wasn't professional. But then at one job, someone said, "Oh, you made a comic? Let me see it." So I brought in my real old copies of Phobos and let him borrow it one weekend. And he came back and he was like, "I was laughing so much. That was so stupid." And so I was like, "What? I actually wrote something in high school that was good." So I read it again, and I kind of like fell in love with what I had written. And that was kind of the thing that inspired me to like pursue comics again. What was this cool old stuff that I had kind of forgotten about, you know? It was real interesting. So
that's great. I don't see really any more questions. Someone asked if we've seen Jeff Darrow's large size uncolored comic, and just commenting on how mind-blowingly detailed his work is. But yeah, his stuff is crazy. Jeff Darrow.
Yeah,
pretty crazy stuff.
I've seen some of his stuff, and it's amazing for sure.
Never heard of him.
Really?
No.
Oh, yeah.
I bet you've seen him. He did a lot of design work for The Matrix, and then also he did the big what is it? Big guy and
Rusty the Boy Robot.
Rusty the Boy Robot. Yeah. If you just Google him, Jeff Darrow, it's the most detailed ink work you've ever seen.
Oh yeah, just looking at some of his work.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But well, it's great talking with all you guys. It's been fun.
Yeah. Thanks again for hanging out.
Once again, we have solved our entire culture's problems and figured out the true meaning of storytelling.
And we've created a safe space so everyone can tell everybody what they don't like and not feel judged.
Much work has been done here. Good night to all.
All right. Well, good talking to you guys. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next week.
See you.